King Story.
King Story.
Little 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 King Story. You've probably heard of it somewhere. It's not the most obscure game in the world or anything, so its name does crop up here and there. But the gaming industry is huge. You'd hardly be at fault for having nothing more than a passing knowledge of this one. Little King Story released in 2009 for Nintendo Wii. Too late to be part of the console's initial launch hype, but too early for the online gaming culture developing in the 2010s to aid in getting its name out there. Also, no offense, buddy, but nothing about this screams, oh yeah, I need to play this. My adolescence was highly influenced by this truly special video game, and now that I'm older and can make content for it, I'm tasked with trying to get people to go back and try it out. And with the modern gaming industry as exciting as it is right now, that's no easy feat. This game's retro now. It's 14 years old today. You know it was 14 years old when Little King Story released? Diddy's Conquest. Little King Story isn't new, it's not historically significant either, so unless you get your kicks from obscurities, there's no obvious reason to come chasing this one. In addition, a game becoming known as a hidden gem can be reductive, as if it's just a novelty to check out and not something that could speak for itself as any other game could. And that would be unfair for a game as passionately created and well designed as this one. This is my favourite video game, and none of my other favourites are all that obscure. This is just on par with those ones. Despite its looks, I promise you that this game is more your thing than you'd expect. In fact, it's probably the very experience that you've been looking for. Now, I understand that it's hard to put your faith in yet another random internet person, but you can place your trust in its all-star development team. You may recognise Hideo Manaba as the main artist for a ton of RPGs, and Kazuya Kurashima for the art style of the weird Tingle games, as well as the voice of Tinkle himself. In Little King Story, they are the character and monster designers respectively, reprising their very same roles from Super Mario RPG. The main theme of the game is by none other than Yoko Shimomura, who I'm sure needs no introduction. And the rest of the soundtrack comes from the legendary Yutaka Minobe, the man behind some or even all of the music heard in just a ton of games. None other than Yasuhiro Wada himself kickstarted this game's production with the hope of creating an IP that could hold its own from his Harvest Moon series, nowadays renamed Story of Seasons. But the project's identity would ultimately be shaped by one man, a developer who has influenced the gaming industry as we know it and yet rarely sees his recognition for it, Yoshiro Kimura. Kimura-san made his debut as the lead developer at the indie studio Lovdelic, who produced several cult classic Japan-only titles in the late 90s before disbanding and jump-starting the careers for its former members. Those developers would go on to be responsible for the creation of so many weird games. But Yoshiro Kimura was the man in charge of designing and writing Lovdelic's first title, The Revolutionary Moon, a game truly ahead of its time in dissecting tropes of the RPG and adventure genres and taking advantage of the often underutilized emotional power of the video game medium. Kimura doesn't even really consider himself a gamer, and instead draws inspiration from his experiences of meeting people from across the world. His perceptions of life in Japan led to him creating Tulip, the famous kissing game, and his visits to the United Kingdom informed the development of the beloved character-driven horror game Rule of Rose. These games are highly praised for their artistic value and writing, but Kimura felt they were lacking in their playability, something he aimed to rectify with his next game. He worked on this one at his friend Yasuhiro Wada's studio Marvelous, and after pouring his heart and soul into the project, the final result was the critically acclaimed Little King Story. The 11th best rated third-party game on the system, considered by Nintendo Power to be one of the top 10 games for the console by its end, nominated for a Smithsonian's Art of Video Games showcase, this game truly proved itself to not merely be an interesting obscurity, but among the very best original games on the Wii. Though its disappointing sales didn't reflect its sheer quality. So Kimura then put working for game companies behind him and went indie, now running his own studio, Onion Games. But his legacy strongly remains. Just for one example, a fan approached him shortly after Onion Games was founded and expressed just how important Moon was to them, and how its witty writing, subverting of tropes, and messages of pacifism were influencing a video game of their own. As a result, the fan was given an opportunity to test out one of Onion Games' first works in progress, Million Onion Hotel, and in return, Kimura tried out an early version of their game, Undertale. Toby Fox and Yoshiro Kimura are now good friends, and not only did Fox encourage Kimura to put Moon's first ever English localization on the Switch, but also to begin development on a brand new RPG with the same scope as Undertale. Wait, what is Little King Story? This is the Kingdom of Alpoco, a tiny country bursting with life. Farmers plant various crops in tilled land and wait to harvest them once they're grown, ready to sell to merchants. Lumberjacks head to the local forest to gather wood, stop for a picnic at lunch, then carry their lumber across the kingdom. Soldiers march around and practice their swordsmanship anytime they're not stationed at defense posts in the castle. Every regular citizen and high-ranking official alike has their place in this settlement, performing their daily routine day in and day out. The nature of the town and its living, breathing inhabitants was directly inspired by that of Animal Crossing. And just like that series, it would be a disservice to reduce these villagers to nothing more than labourers, as this talkative bunch packs a range of personalities amongst them.
Relax, the records minister is here. Save and rest often. Those are the basics of being king. Now then, you wanted to save?
You know I said this game's creator is friends with Toby Fox?
Save in the file, save in the file. Why am I doing this? What does it all mean?
Yeah, it shows.
Just because I'm fiscally challenged doesn't mean I can't find a life partner. I'm gonna hook up and start making some babies, woo!
Alpoco is a kingdom in name only. There's no room to expand, the castle is basically a hovel, and the king is a circus midget. And it is pitch black at night.
I want you to build me a church. God will punish you if you don't. And if God doesn't punish you, I will. Only those who are chosen by God may become bald, as baldness is pleasing to God. He speaks directly to those like myself who are sans hair.
I heard it through the grapevine. At the edge of the world is a place where it said all life began. The first creation made by the Creator is said to live there. It must be a truly sacred place.
I think you should invade it.
It's a tune that'll get you lost. Many have never returned after humming it. And if they did, it was too late, because we already sold their stuff.
As a Grand Soldier, I think we should increase military spending and expand the kingdom by force. Global imperialism for the win! I will be by your side right away, my king. I will gladly sacrifice the last of my HP for you.
Go back to being carefree. You're joking, right? Turning those cute, cuddly little forest creatures into pincushions. Please, for the love of God, don't take that away from me.
Komura's writing loves observational humour. In his own life, he follows a philosophy of going out there and talking to people outside of one's comfort zone, and his characters reflect his own experiences interacting with the real folks he's met. And from that, this is the world he's created. This is the world of Little King Story. One where silly guys spout wit as they get on with their ordinary lives. But that's not the game itself, nor is it the extent of its world. For it doesn't matter if a citizen is on duty at work, attending school, or even going on a date, at any given time, this can happen. This is King Korobo. The nation of Alpoco hasn't had a monarch in several decades and has fallen into a state of disarray, with an economy in tatters and much previously habitable land lost to wild animals. But recently a young boy was found in a forest in possession of a crown. And not just any crown, one infused with a holy power to influence the minds of those with too weak a will to resist it. Under the advice of Alpoco's elderly Bull Knight Hauser, yes that's right I said Bull Knight, Korobo takes advantage of the denizens of the land to lend a hand in his new initiative to improve their kingdom. He hasn't got many skills of his own, so if Korobo needs to dig a hole for treasure, he'll fetch himself a farmer. If he needs to break apart a fallen tree blocking the road, he'll drag in a lumberjack. Once he's got what he needs, he heads back to his throne to sell the findings in order to fatten up the kingdom's national budget, so he can then command his ministers to allocate the funds towards new housing and workplaces. More living space means a higher population, which results in universal perks for all citizens, and more workplaces means more job variety, giving you more options in what you do and more places to go. It's not just buildings you can spend your money on though, there's also badges you can buy that will expand the number of people you can have in your army. Fast travel, formations, a podium that can summon citizens straight to the castle. With this many options, you'll often find yourself stuck for choice knowing exactly where to put your limited budget. This is actually the gameplay of Little King Story. It's not a life simulation game as it's often mistaken as. In fact, as the player, you put people out of their lives to instead assemble your own team of synergetic job classes that can deal with whatever obstacles stand in your way of finding cash for your royal investments. This freeform reward cycle is the core of this game's fun, and there's really no other game that plays quite like it. But there's one problem for our Korobo. If Alpoco is small, it's limited in what it can do for itself. A little treasure hunting around the suburbs isn't going to be enough to secure this nation's prosperity. The Alpocians are growing restless, and talk begins of reclaiming lost land. And not just that, but potentially enveloping new territory too. invasion. Thing is, the sleepy hamlet of Alpoco has been out of the loop for quite some time, so their knowledge of what lies beyond the safety of their borders has dwindled to nothing more than rumours. Citizens will share hearsay of the dangers lurking outside the kingdom, and right-hand man Hauser speaks ill of the bizarre life said to dwell there. Through the mail, intel reports on supposed mysterious sightings out there in places unseen. The castle's watchtower allows obscured glimpses of what appear to be landmarks in the world beyond. What am I even looking at? Is that like a crane? In space? With all this anticipation puppeteering the imagination and the future of the kingdom on the line, there's only one thing for it. The moment you leave the Cherry Kingdom, you feel it. It's clear you're not supposed to be here. The overworld theme isn't one of bravery and glory, but caution and trepidation. This is someone else's soil beneath your feet. Here you'll find the remains of Alpoco's previously occupied territories, remnants of farmlands and abandoned human habitats. The wilds that circle Alpoco are home to a menagerie of peculiar enemies referred to as unidentified mysterious animals, or Uma. And if Korobo dies, he returns to the last time he stayed on the throne and loses all progress since. It's vital to survive out here. But the young king is weak as heck, with low hit points and almost no means of attack. And thus, he must utilize his royal guard to fight. Combat is refreshingly unorthodox, and I love it. Like everything else, it centers on the concept of commanding a citizen to run forwards, where they'll lock horns with the foe they meet and deal continuous damage. Any citizen can fight, but this is where the soldier's training truly shines. Naturally, the Uma will retaliate, so it's your job as the king to hit the retreat button and instantly call all attacking citizens back to your side to escape harm's way. Send troops to attack, then safely call them to retreat. It's simple enough to grasp, but engaging enough to be worth mastering. Every enemy attack has a consistent, choreographed startup, so getting familiar with the timing of these moves allows you to optimize getting the most hits in while securely avoiding taking any yourself. You could even throw out citizens and instantly retreat to fake out an attack, then exploit its cooldown to give yourself a bigger window to wreak havoc. When citizens retreat, they run in a straight line to you, so Korobo's positioning relative to his environment is important to consider too, so as people don't leave one danger and run straight into another. This all paves a feeling of control, where getting hit almost always feels like your fault, like you could have avoided that, and leads to many a situation where the safer thing would be to retreat. Leaving them out just a little longer could be enough to finish the enemy off just before that lunge comes out. That's a feeling that Little King Story players know too well. Soldiers aren't the only job relevant to battle though. Hunters are equipped with bows and can fire arrows from a safe distance, but in return are slower, can naturally miss moving targets, and have a limited number of arrows. They can be a menace in large numbers, as long as you're prepared to smash open vases lying around to find more ammunition, or return to the borders to restock the count entirely. They complement the more straightforward fighting style offered by the soldiers. But neither of these guys are of any use if they're dead. The only way to heal on the fly is to find a source of steam coming up from the ground and open it up with a farmer to produce a hot spring. If you've lost those guys before stumbling across one of these, you're in a bit of a pickle, so their survival is well worth prioritizing. See, every citizen has their own differing individual number of hit points, and if they run out, the citizen falls in battle, and you'll be paying benefits for each one lost. Luckily, more times than not, they'll wash ashore on the coast of the Alpoco Kingdom by the next day, but occasionally they won't be so fortunate. Every citizen that doesn't reappear on the beach is gone for good, and they get a funeral, attended by the friends they've made during their time in the king's posse, as well as their spouse and children if they have any. Of course, from a gameplay standpoint, you can put someone else in their place, so while the repercussions for the death of citizens are fairly minimal for the player, they are made to feel important to this world. Still, no matter what happens, we must push on into the wilderness. Beyond more UMA coming out at night, there's no time limits or immediacy, so as the player, you're free to take things at whatever pace suits you. It often serves well to tackle each enemy region through several small expeditions. After all, those creatures can be tough. Though equally, if you're feeling gutsy, there's nothing stopping you sprinting guns blazing to the end of a given area in one go. But that won't be easy. The game will hit you with many a setup that deliberately tests your mettle. Cast your eye to this predicament here. There's a fork in the road with fallen trees blocking both paths, but stationed in front of them is a giant strong chicken, and 4 weak sentient melons shielding him. The most obvious course of action is to focus all efforts on the strongest Uma first and foremost for an easier time breaking through those barricades of logs. But it's not the only way. You could also pick off the melons with hunters first. You could bring a ton of lumberjacks and attempt to break through the logs faster than the chicken can disrupt you. There's also an optional job who specializes in fighting this chicken Uma specifically, which is just a straight up advantage, but only if you've unlocked their workplace before this encounter. And then there's another unlockable job that could clear this boulder on the path above to bypass this whole conundrum by way of a totally different route. What's this all for? What's your main goal in these barren lands? Through the mail come certain letters that speak of powerful monsters that protect their habitat and the Uma that live there. If Korobo accepts the challenge and makes his way to the heart of a forest, then he'll find what lies there. A guardian. These beasties pack a punch, so it's up to you to bring a party of your liking to bring him down. Defeating a major opponent in this game feels like a momentous occasion, a historic moment for the people of Alpoco. Hauser praises you to the backdrop of a fireworks show. Sometimes the citizens run a festival for a whole day, and that area under the Guardian's watch becomes an Uma-free plot of land in which Korobo can build more places to live and work. And through this, Alpoco becomes a more imposing kingdom, better prepared for their next target. But there's more to the outside world than making a beeline to the next large in charge and beating the living heck out of them. After every major accomplishment, you're given more freedom and options to play with, so the adventure becomes increasingly non-linear as it goes along. It pays to scour every corner of this vast world, as there's always bound to be something, like loot to unearth. There's booty everywhere if you look for it. Look by this tree, there's a tiny little crack. Just get a farmer to pry it open, and that's another gold bar for our collection. There are invisible holes you have to pinpoint with a citizen to uncover them. Some treasure only appears at night, and man, there's nothing quite like settling down after a fruitful session of exploring and seeing all that moolah roll in. Money's not even the end of it. Scattered across the world, there's artwork submitted by real-life fans from before the game even came out. You can collect and trade these with an art dealer in return for weapons and armor, to bestow upon your team members so they can gain perks like dishing out extra damage, taking more blows, or shrugging off status effects. Heck, you can straight up find equipment hiding out there. This game makes discovery so fun! There's this constant addictive loop of going out and venturing into the unknown and coming back with stuff to build up your town and army and prepare yourself to face even more of the perils out there and access new areas to explore and watch the people of Alpoco praise you for it. And I don't know, there's something that's off. This outside world, where does it end? Past every area is another, and then another, and then once you're as far as you can go, you can still see more in the distance, just out of reach. I'm truly lost now, I'm not even on the map anymore. If I could destroy this rock wall, where would that even take me? The so-called animals, there's clearly a little more to them. Hauser encourages Korobo to push further for the sake of the kingdom, but when will enough be enough? And how do Korobo's friends and subjects really feel about this? And what's up with this man screaming about climate disasters? It's clear that there are weirder mysteries than demonic wildlife out there, and there are definitely bigger targets than guardians that we don't know about yet. At the heart of this game is a team of talented creators who will stop at nothing to play with your expectations. And I mean at every opportunity. Did I not mention this game's soundtrack's entirely classical? They thought it'd be a fun challenge to bend existing public domain music to fit the moods they wanted. And you expect classical music to sound a certain way, but then Minobi comes in and hits you with... And that's why I want you to play this. I've already had my banging time with it. I know it's amazing. I don't need that affirmation. I could go to the game's cult following for that. I just think it'd be a waste if more people didn't get to try this. The point is not to say that it's good. No, the point of this is to say that there's a golden opportunity for you to play something with no expectations and full faith that it will deliver. I've always regarded Little King Story as a game where every moment is better than the last. I had fun when I first started it, but I could not have predicted the kind of game it would end up being by the end, and I guarantee you won't either. If there's one game I wish I could play for the first time again, it's this one. So if you find yourself enjoying the game even a little, push that little bit further. It will surprise you. I've tried to keep this as sanitized of even a hint of spoilers from the adventure, which was hard because those are all my favourite parts. The sad truth is we tend to try games that we know more about, not less, despite the feeling of discovery being such a primary reason why we spend time with this medium. And when a game bases itself so cleverly around the player's lack of expectation and knowledge of what's to come, I don't want to rob you of that. I think you'd really enjoy playing this. So if you want to do that, go find a way to play it on Wii! Since nobody gives two butts about this game, you can find it pretty dang cheap, but the retro video game market is unstable, so I'd get in on that while it's still going for the price of a coffee. You may have also heard there's a PC port, but I would stay away. That's a whole can of worms for another video. Also, if you're even just a little intrigued, don't go and watch other overviews on this game. They tend to give everything away by showing their reactions to the surprises, and where's the fun in that? So, all in all, Little King story. Got a lot of soul, amazing exploration, great art style, great music. I guess it controls a little bit like